Hi, everybody. I'm Mr. Aurora. Thank you for coming to this video. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing Miss Bonnie Berko, the esteemed, the honorable Bonnie Berko. I saw a photo of you dressed like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so I gotta go with that. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How you doing?
We're good, we're good. Do you mind telling us who you are, what your job is? Because I think that some of the folks in my audience have no idea.
I've been working in television for about 40 years. I started out at CNN, starting up this little network called CNN 40 years ago. And now I work for ESPN. I've been there for 20 years, working on a show called Pardon the Interruption, or PTI. I'm the assistant director, and it's a show that I really love.
Yeah, we love watching it too. I invited Mr. Campbell here too, since he's a big fan. Mr. Campbell, feel free to jump in whenever you want to. The first question I have for you is, so I see that you, in some places, that you were a producer and that you were also an associate director. Can you briefly explain what those jobs are, how they're different?
Producers of our show, or of any show, are the ones who put together all the ideas and take like a rundown of what you want to put in the show that day. And then you think about what video goes in that story, what sound bites go in that story, what's the story about, and has it, is it an absolute story? Have you checked it out? Have you researched it? And then they put it into the rundown, and the directors take that show and actually put it on the air, roll the tapes, cue the camera, make the cameras look good, get the remote set up, commercial times, how long is they? It all has to add up to a certain time frame that you're given on the air. It has to time out perfectly. You can't go over, you can't go under. So all those things go, and then you mesh them together, and it all comes out pretty good.
I was lucky enough to go behind the scenes and see that in action, and it is a well-oiled machine for sure. We'll get to that in just a second, but something else that I had a question for you was that I've seen also, besides the different jobs, different nicknames too, that Bonnie Gets It Done Berko, the Bonnie Worker Bee Berko. Where did those come from?
That's pretty much from Kornheiser, because since I've been working with him so long, he just gave me these little names, because whenever he needs something done, I get it done. And I've been able to get like crazy stuff pulled off from who knows where I pull it out of, but I get it done. And that kind of stuck.
Yeah, I even see, I think there was fan art maybe of like, you can buy that shirt. We can be Bonnie Worker Bee, or Bonnie Gets It Done for
I have a shirt right
Halloween.
over here.
Yeah, incredible. Oh, yes. You've got your own fan art.
So
Yes.
oh, there it is.
That's
Yeah.
the one.
Somebody made that for me. A fan made that. Is that the greatest? Look how
That's
cute
so
it is.
awesome. I love it. I love it. That's also another question that I had for you. So sometimes you, yeah, I saw this video of the set being transformed for Thanksgiving. And then I listened to another podcast that you were on describing kind of all the sort of behind the scenes things that you do and the last minute gathering of everything and making it all perfect kind of. What, how are you also proactively kind of reaching out to these folks? Because I also saw one time there was a Quince Orchard football jersey in the background, and I lost my mind. I was like, that's incredible. I think it was either the day before the state championship or the day of. Can you talk a little bit about that?
My kid went to QO. He was in the marching band. He played the quints, and he would march out before the team. And it was just the greatest thing. And I was a very, very involved parent when my kid went there. I worked in the barbecue pit every game on Friday nights. It was so much fun. And when they won the state, I said, I'm putting the jersey on the Statue of Liberty, and I'm putting the helmet on the set. And I did. And then a few years later, you guys won the state again. And I had to put the stuff out. That was the best.
It means a lot. It's pretty cool. And I know that your son went to QO. speaking of your family, your husband also works for ESPN. Do you have a rivalry? Does that come up with, do you have issues with that?
We actually worked together on a show years ago. Something called a sports news network started up. It was 100 years ago, and he and I got to direct his shows that he was producing. And occasionally, fight would break out in the control room, and we would go to battle. No, but it was very short-lived network, and we enjoyed working together very much. But he's an investigative journalist, so he works. He was working for the enterprise unit at ESPN, which was pretty much outside the lines. That was a big investigative show. And now he's been doing, deep, long form investigative stuff. Of course, with COVID, it's kind of slowed down a lot because he can't travel, but he's won 12 or 13 Emmys. He's won a Peabody. He won an Edward R. Murrow. He's won many, many journalism awards for his investigative reporting. And so we don't work together very often after that, unless he needs to come into my office to use, video equipment, use something. But yeah, we're like there. He's been there 25 years.
Yeah, you've had a pretty long tenure yourself too.
We're ESPN, the family.
Right. And I imagine that, working for such a large corporation definitely has its benefits and maybe some drawbacks too. I know that you mentioned how many awards that Artie's won. Your show's done pretty well for itself too, I'd say. I feel like every year there's either a we're up, we won, or you got hosed. I feel like you got a whole bookshelf.
We missed out. Last year we did not get it. This year. Last year I did get to go and brought home my third. Right over there. I could take another trip.
I think we believe you.
Yeah,
we've seen it on Twitter for sure.
It's so fun, and it's an unbelievable honor to be recognized for hard work. And we have a little tiny group of people that work in my office. Is like we have 10 people maybe that do a daily show 5 days a week for 20 years, and same people pretty much. We don't really have a lot of turnover because everybody loves our job. But that's unheard of in this business, to have that few people on a show. I mean, there's others scattered up in Bristol who take in our feed and stuff like that. We pretty much do it all ourselves. And so when we win, it's just so fantastic.
That was actually one of the questions that I had too, is that you can see that, you can feel that when you go and kind of like as an observer behind the scenes, that it seems like everyone's friends and everyone's kind of working real hard. And do you, because you have a small staff, are you then forced to do like wear multiple hats all the time? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Everybody wears a lot of hats. I not only AD the show and am in charge of the props and the costumes and all that other stuff, but I also am like the office manager. I pay bills, because when we first started, there was 5 of us. And we didn't have an office manager. And I said, I'll do it. And I started paying the bills for the office and taking care of all things office-wise, which includes parking and water delivery and all that stuff. And I've just kept doing it. So for 20 years, I've been doing office manager stuff. And it's been working out just fine. So why change anything?
All right. Have you found that is a trend in your career, that you see these opportunities and you just volunteer and kind of get in there?
Yep.
How important is that? And is there a way to teach that to, let's say, high school students who are taking media classes, perhaps?
Well, when I first started at CNN, it was brand new, and we all were right out of school. Every one of us was right out of college. And when they said, come in and learn, we went in like insane people and learned everything. We learned how to operate every piece of equipment. We learned how to go on camera and be a journalist. And we just did it. And then wherever you wanted to move into, you would move into it. I started out on camera, and then I became a director within 6 months, maybe not even that much. And then I was directing live events for CNN for years. And I did audio. I was an audio tech, and I did visual switching on the switcher. And I would go out and report in the field. So there was so many things you could do if you wanted to learn it, get in there and do it. And they were really tremendous about hiring people into positions. If you wanted to learn to be an editor, boom, you'd have a job a few weeks later if you really worked at it. So that was where everybody learned. So I would advise students, learn everything you can. Just go in and tail along with people, and then you can just put on your resume how much work you've done and what you've learned for the process. And when we have interns, and we get a whole lot of people who want to intern for our show, but when we take in the interns, we don't make them get coffee. We make them help edit. We help them with ideas for the show. We have them help in every way. And when I first, years ago, when we would have an intern at their last day, I would take the intern into the control room, because sometimes they wanted to be on the editorial side and the production side and not the operation side. But I would take each intern into the control room and I'd sit them in my chair right before the show. I said, "You're ADing the show today. Go to it."
What?
And they're like, "Wah!" They'd freak out. And they would, I of course would be with them the whole time.
Right.
I would give them a quick rundown. It's not that hard. Here's what you do. Basically count backwards and I time everything out. And they'd be like shaking, but I'd be with them and I'd talk them through it. And some of them like had little mini heart attacks.
Yeah, I just had one.
Made it through. I'd make sure they got through and I'd be watching everything. But I let them call the show, actually call the show with me standing over them. And at the end, it's like their hearts were racing and they were so triumphant, they would be screaming and they're like excited. And that was really fun. But that was like throwing them into the fire just for a little while.
Absolutely. I've seen it. It looks like the inside of like a pilot's cockpit. Like there's so many controls, there's so many buttons. I feel like there's so many things that can go wrong. And the thing that I was most fascinated by is when you were in the studio pre-pandemic, like I think you record in the afternoon and then it airs that evening. So like your window is pretty tight as far as kind of getting everything all together. Have you ever run into a situation where you were running really close to that time, or?
God, yes.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we usually tape our show, it's called live to tape, and we tape it like a half an hour before we go on the air, 45 minutes before we go on the air.
That's nerve-wracking to me, not just that.
The reason we tape it is, number one, if we make a mistake, we can restart or we can fix it. And we do all the time make mistakes during our taping. Let's say the tape isn't ready, then we'll tape without it and then we'll roll it in live. Excuse me. And if there's breaking news, or if we've made mistakes, or if we just didn't get it done in time, we will do the show live. And excuse me, we're pretty good with live. Excuse me. We're really good with live because we've all grown up in television. We know what we're doing because I cut my teeth at CNN and that's live 24/7. But when we go live, Tony and Mike are also very strong when they're live because you're at the height, their adrenaline kicks in. And we do really, really well. And I would really prefer if we were doing it live because it's that much sharper. But we're live a lot. Not the whole show, but a lot of segments like the A block. If somebody gets fired right before we go on the air, or somebody gets traded, or something happens that needs to be in the A block instead of in the errors and omissions, we'll go live.
Right.
The thing we just taped, and we'll do it live. We'll do it live.
Yeah, do it live. I think that happened just the other day with Bill O'Brien got fired from the Texans and Tony didn't even realize it. I guess he just realized, in the moment realized
literally wrote that intro right. We didn't even have time to tell him. We just rewrote it and he read it and like, oh, I didn't even know this. Because we had it in the C block and we moved it up to the A's just like that. So.
Right. Yeah, I love how genuine and honest the show is. And I think that it's a reflection of the chemistry that happens behind camera too. So it is genuinely a testament to your show. It seems like a very fun culture. And I can see why there's very few turnover and why you get so many intern requests.
We've hired a lot of our interns.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, incredible.
Because when you get really stunning people, you don't want to let them go.
Of course not, right? If you prove that you can get in there and be a resource and that you're valuable and you can be proactive, who doesn't want that on their team? Just a quick technical question for some of my students watching this. What do you mean by A block, B block, C block? Like what, and how does the writing process work as far as the show? I don't know if those are the same question or not.
Our segments, all shows have segments unless they're commercial free. And we are separated by 2 commercial breaks. So that's the A segment. A block is our headlines. The B block is either our guest, which we haven't had in a long time because of COVID, or our game. And we play a bunch of different games, as you know, heads on stick, toss up, all those. And then the last block, which is our happies, happy birthday, happy Annie, happy trails. And then we have the big finish, which is all the other stuff wrapped up really, really quick. So those are our 3 segments. Back when we did guests, we would tape the guest sometimes early in the day because we go on other people's schedules. And if that's the time that we can get LeBron or whoever to be on, then we're going to tape that and then edit it, and then put it in the show in the edited form.
Right, that makes sense.
Wait, what was the first part of the question?
Sorry, so you answered the A blocks, like sort of the
yeah.
different blocks are by commercial break, but how does that sort of relate to the writing process as far as coming up with, like, how do you know a story is an A story or a B block, or let's just put it at the end?
Well, Monday is the easiest because Monday is filled with all the weekend's games. So naturally, those are going to go in the A block, especially if there's something crazy that happened. So you fill your first segment with all your headlines about the day before, the night before, whatever. Or that day's hiring, firing, death, anything crazy. The B block, of course, is the game. And for the game, sometimes I do fortune teller. And for fortune teller, I need to call people and get questions. So
I've been called before. And it was, and just that little 10 seconds was incredibly nerve-wracking, even though your job is far more. I was like, I'm gonna mess up. Wait, what did you say?
The funniest thing is when I call, because I have a database and I have people write to me at fortuneteller@gmail.com. Okay. And when people write to me and include their phone numbers, I will call them and give them a question to ask. But when they really write me and they really want it, and so I go to that database whenever I do fortune teller and I get people. But when I do call them, they panic and freak to ask that question. So when I'm rolling, I have to go over it, and I go over and over it with them, and their voices crack, and they like they can't. It's one sentence usually. They can't. It's really, really funny. But everybody crushes. Everybody does a good job.
Yeah, well, it helps having the question already prepared to be able to practice. But I couldn't help but I'm like, oh, they're recording it. I wasn't loud enough. I can tell. Like I'm like in my head as I'm saying the thing. So
that's why I'd make you do it over and over until I like it the way it sounds.
Well, and that's an essential part of the process, right? Is being willing to reshoot things and make sure that they're crisp and clean and good to go. Something else that you reminded me of in talking about kind of which types of content go in which block. You had mentioned that, Monday's pretty easy because you're wrapping up kind of what happened over the weekend. I am astonished at how fluid the show has remained, even when there wasn't sports at all. Can you talk about kind of how challenging that was, or how did you transition in that sort of weird period where there's no sports and we have no idea when it's coming back, to now Tony is in his attic? Like, can you tell us about kind of the process since March?
That was tough. That was the toughest time. Because there wasn't a whole lot to talk about, and you can't talk about just all COVID because that's just boring. Oh God, but we had, it's just scouring all of the news sources, scouring them and finding something interesting to talk about that is timely, and pulling them and making it interesting. And the boys were tremendous. They would talk about anything. I'm just trying to think back because everything is such a blur. But we were able to find enough to fill. And going back to the things that can go wrong, all of these cameras that we have set up in various talents' homes, and people doing this on iPads, and the mistakes were amazing. You know, we'd have so many problems technically with recording it. And so we would lose the signal. And if you're losing the signal when somebody's home, like Tony would be in his attic, and we would have had so many technical issues. And if that fails, you got to hurry up and pick up your computer and do a FaceTime, which we did past few weeks. We've been doing a lot of FaceTime because Tony's internet was just failing him. And so we would have to scramble to record this off of FaceTime instead of, you know, a real camera. But I don't think our viewers cared one way or the other. And it worked. But as far as finding stories, we always would find something, but it wasn't necessarily the game the day before or the race.
Right. I've never heard so much news about the Bundesliga and the Japanese baseball league. and talking about, well, what types of fake fans do you prefer in the crowd?
And I love that when we were at the beginning of the cutouts that were the cutout fans, and a foul ball would go into the stands and take out a baby. I thought that was the greatest. Or a ball would go through a dog's head.
Or the robots, and yeah, all kinds of crazy things. Has this pandemic been sort of the biggest wrench or challenge in your career?
Yeah, it's been bad. I mean, going into an empty newsroom, we've had an empty newsroom. I'm like, there's only 4 of us tops, because we try to keep people away, and people are working from home. We're actually editing. We set up the editing systems in people's homes, so they're editing from home. And I'm in the control room. We have a total of 4 people in the control room, where we usually would have 6, 7. And we're just making do with as few people as possible. But being in an empty newsroom is just very depressing. I get in about, I work very few hours now. Instead of me working an 8-10 hour day, I work 2-3 hours. I just go in there, sit down, do the show, and then get out.
Yeah.
Because the rest of it can be done at home. But I'm used to a really loud, bustling, noisy, crazy newsroom with just people coming in and out, and madness, which is just the greatest. I remember a few times I've been on the phone talking to somebody, and they'll say, "Who is screaming in the background?" I'm like, "It's just the boys yelling about
They're
whatever."
just talking.
Yeah, just talking, yelling about whatever argument they're having. It's just the best. And now it's just weird, because sometimes Mike is there and sometimes he's not. And Tony's not leaving his attic because he's too nervous. So it's a big difference. Yeah, I miss my newsroom.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you, I was surprised to hear this, but then I was also like so fascinated by it too, because I've forced my kids to do this before as students, and they hated it, but I think, and I hope eventually appreciated it. But you had talked on a podcast about taking improv classes. Has that helped you navigate all of this? Because this is totally unpredictable, and I can't think of a better tutorial for handling that.
I took improv classes with my husband, and it was more fun learning how to do that. And the thing about improv, which your students might enjoy, when I first started, I have no problem public speaking, and I have no problem, doing anything publicly, about my job. But some people came into that, and when you're supposed to introduce yourself, some of the people that were in our class, now we were the oldest ones because we're old, they were all in their 20s, I'd say, 20s, early 30s. And a couple of them say, "I have problems talking to people," or "I'm not comfortable speaking in public," and they would be like in their own little shell. By the 4th class of improv, they were running and doing crazy things and yelling and laughing and pretending that they're a vacuum cleaner, and just the stuff that you're supposed to do in improv that lets it all hang out, and acting like an idiot like the rest of us. And at the end of us, we had to perform for the public, and they were out there and killed it.
Nice.
And it makes you come out of your shell, whatever the shell is. You come out because it's all about being with the people and using them to help make you good. It's never about yourself. It's always about you and the others. And I just thought that was the greatest thing. And that's really, I think kids would love this, love it.
Yeah, yeah.
As for work, I don't think it's helped me at work in any way because I'm just a loudmouth to begin with, and I don't have a problem acting like an idiot. But that's a really great way to find your inner funny person.
Too funny. I enjoy all that experience. Speaking of, one of the things that I find interesting and challenging too is to be on camera. Mike and Tony often have an earpiece in their ears while also talking. How challenging is it to be in the moment talking with the person across from you while also hearing like people in the newsroom say, actually, they won the championship in 68, not 67. You're wrong. Like, how do you?
First of all, they have to learn how to do that. That they learn that from the day one. You have to learn how to talk when somebody's talking in your ear. But the producers or anybody knows that you wait for them to take a breath if you can, and you say it in as few words as humanly possible. So I'm sure you've seen in like newscasts, somebody will pull the plug right out of their ear. That means that somebody's talking too much, or they may be making an accident talking to the wrong person and not realizing the button they're pushing. But whatever it is, they pulled that IFB out because somebody was talking too much. And they probably get completely crushed after they're off the air for doing that. But you learn how to do it properly and how to not say too much. And if you're a really easygoing show, the person will say, "Whoa, what? Oh, okay, I got that date wrong. It's blah, blah, blah. Somebody just said something in my ear." So that's also can help, but you can't let them get away with saying something that's completely wrong ever.
Yeah, that was something I was fascinated by in the behind the scenes too, just how rapid fire even the fact checking is, because it needs to be, and that level of professionalism is pretty darn
Our
cool to
producers
see.
are tremendous. They will spot a mistake. Back in the day, when we first started, we had Tony Reale was our fact checker. He was a stat boy because he was a boy back then. Now he's a man.
Yes.
40. He was our stat boy, and he would check everything. And at the end of the show, we would give him a few minutes or seconds, and he would just let them know if they got something wrong. Now we just do it on the fly, and they usually catch mistakes.
Do you have folks in the back who are kind of like encyclopedic and just know this stuff?
Most of the people on the show are pretty encyclopedic. They are.
That's pretty incredible.
Yep. And we can have an editor who's in the back editing the piece for the next segment, and he'll be listening in the editing room, and he'll hear something and he'll tell us, "No, that's not right," because they are super, super sharp with their statistics.
I imagine, working on this show, you being a sports junkie would just be, it can only help you.
But so many parents, grandparents, people come to me and they say, "My kid should be working for you. My kid knows everything there is to know about sports." And a lot of kids do. A lot of kids know so much. And that's like their passion. But you got to do more than just know sports if you're going to work in the business. Because a lot of people know sports.
Absolutely, right? You have to know about graphics, audio, cameras, switching, highlights, clips. I've seen you count backwards and forwards, and you have timers and switches and dials and all this stuff. Is there a single aspect of your job behind the scenes that you love the most? I stumped her. I did a good job. I made her stop and think.
Well done.
This is what's made me miss it so much during Corona is I love the newsroom. I love a newsroom which is bustling and ideas are being thrown around, and I miss the camaraderie. I've been in so many TV jobs. I love the adrenaline. I am an adrenaline junkie. I love being on the air. I love when we're live because you are at your absolute height of how good you can be. You're not going to let nothing goes by you. I miss that. I miss all that, the fun.
So. It's a high flying kind of experience. Yeah, absolutely. I could feel that just watching everything kind of happen.
Not good if you have a weak stomach. It's not your job.
Yeah, you got to be able to roll with it, right?
I remember back when I was directing, and I was hired to direct at like locals. I was hired to work at Channel 5 and Channel 9, vacation really for something like that. And when you go into to a new place and you're learning how to do it, everything is different. Each shop you're in, the way you call it is different. The way they have the monitors is different. And they literally give you 4 or 5 days to learn it and learn how they say things. And I remember I would go in, I would take my 4 or 5 days, learn it. And then when they throw you into the fire, you have to do it yourself. I'd be really kind of sick and I'd have to go to the bathroom before the show and be like, oh my God, and the terror. And then you go out and you do it and it's great. But right before your first show is like, oh, my stomach.
And to think that's the experience you're giving your interns. Cruel, Bonnie.
Cruel, aren't I? So cruel.
I have some lighthearted questions for you, which is who writes the jokes and what's the deal with their obsession with Uranus?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Uranus is just it's always funny. It's never not funny. And we all pick things to write about for the open of the show. Example, if I surf the internet and find some weird thing, we can throw it into the open of the show.
Oh, like the holidays, right? Like today is read a book day or something. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you see something like that, throw it out there. Our executive producer is a funny guy, and he can pull a joke out of anything. But it's really great if you have something like yesterday's Dolly Parton wants to be photographed for Playboy on her 75th birthday. We just will pull something fun out of things. And we use people as the butt of jokes as long as they're cool with it. You know, we don't want to hurt anybody. But there's always something funny that you can talk about just for 5 seconds at the top of the show. And just scanning the internet will give you so much stuff to talk about. A guy smuggling snakes in his pants. I mean, come on, that's just
things that happen in Florida, or situations where Tony talks about being naked. I think
it's
usually kill.
We don't do as much naughty stuff as we used to. Not even close. Like, oh my God! In the beginning of the show, we'd get away with anything. Now we're much more in tune with that, and we don't do nearly the naughtiness as we used to get away with. That's because we've grown and we've evolved.
You've matured. And
you can't do 2 old guys doing those kind of jokes anymore, because that's kind of creepy. But Tony really loves the opens. But yeah, we all will throw in ideas if we have something fun to say.
And then just the best idea wins, the best joke wins. That's nice. Is it frustrating for you when, I know I've noticed this too, where like if a joke is really funny, it like there's like a comment about it and then like a whole extra section to the point where like the intro music is now gone. Like we passed that 10 seconds ago. Does that like wreck the rest of the show?
Nope.
How does that work?
I could easily, like at the end of the A block and the end of the B block, I let them trail. I let them keep talking. I could cut them off early if I need the time, because the C block is going to be long, right? But if it's really great chatter, I'm going to leave it in there and keep that, even if the music's gone, because it's great. And then when we're going into the C block and the happies, I have let's say if my happies are 3 minutes long, I got to make sure that everything times out. So depending on where we are, I may have to trim them because I can't go over. I can't go under, I can't go over. And so we let them go. If they're on a roll, you don't shut them up, you just let them go.
And so the C block, because it's sort of at the end, typically is the one to get shortened first.
The C block, we can cut down on their read, and they know how much time they have, and they see the clock is ticking, because we have it in the rundown. You see the clock ticking down. We can let them go or stay, but the end of the show is a hard out. It's called a hard out, because if you're familiar with the show, at the end of the show, we have the whisper, PTI.
Mm-hmm.
That is timed out by me exactly. So when they shut up, it goes PTI. And I have to count them to that. So that is a hard out. I can't trim that, but I can trim what's going in. I can trim some of the things they're talking about. I can trim the end of the A's or the B's. We can make them a little bit tighter. So it's all timed out, and you just got to work the magic in the middle.
Gotcha. That to me, that's one of the like the fun little things for people who like Mr. Campbell, like myself, who've been watching, forever, is the kind of the little variations and sort of the jokes, or when there's extra time, and like the Canadian flag, or other things like that are just kind of little touches of just kind of personality. It's really nice, and to be able to do that while also being a sports show, while also dealing with now social consciousness issues too, is kind of a tremendous thing. Have you seen this industry change as a result of your show? Like we were talking about how, like before you came
Like
on, just
the
the
rundown,
rundown.
the thing that we make on our show, the rundown with the timeline going down and each story that lights up next, we were the first, and it's copied everywhere. It's copied around the globe, and we were the first ones to do that. So I've seen that, and we have been copied in other shows who do it exactly like we do with two guys. And if you look online, you'll find the Australian PTI and the UK PTI, and they're hilarious. They're just hilarious, seeing how they built their rundown and how the two guys go at it like we do. And we think that that's just really sweet that they're copying us. It's
Well,
flattering.
it's flattery, right? It's yeah, and you do it the best. So
They lead with what the hell do they lead with? What's that what's the oh my god, the thing with the stick, and then it's
oh,
what is that game called? In Scotland, in Ireland, it's I had never heard of it until I went to Scotland and Ireland, and it looks like a field hockey stick. I'm totally drawing a blank. It's an odd little stick, but it's huge, huge, huge in Scotland, and
we're gonna, it's all gonna come to us
yeah,
afterwards, right? And this is just a case of we're old and we don't know this
it's a
stuff.
funny name. It's a really
Mhm.
funny name, but it's gigantic.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? So 20 years of this great success and inventing things like the rundown, obviously you don't want to mess too much with a formula that's widely popular, but how much do you feel a need to kind of stay on the cutting edge of, kind of some new things to make the show fresh?
We made a new set. If you can see, we have a new set, which is more modern, but we kept it with the old by having heads on sticks behind them. We've always had a wall with heads on sticks, and people's heads that we cut out and put on the wall. That stayed with us throughout. So we did upgrade the set from a rinky-dink set into this modernized one, which is beautiful. But we've kept the heads, we've kept the Statue of Liberty, we've kept
The lamp.
the lamp. That was the lamp that Tony Reale gave us in the very beginning. The mailbox, I created the mailbox just by, it's this so ridiculous generic mailbox, but I put eyes and a mouth on it. That's lives. And I got that Statue of Liberty by going to Home Goods one day back in the beginning, and I saw the Statue of Liberty. I said, hey, that would look good on our set. And I drove to work with it sitting in the passenger seat of my car because I had a convertible, and it was standing next to me as I drove to work. And it was very kind of fun. I'm glad there were no low hanging bridges. And that was our, that has lived on the set ever since. And that was really kind of fun. But a lot of the old is mixing with the new also. And the mailbox, right now the mailbox is at, wait a minute, my phone, let me shut this off. Right now the mailbox is at Tony's attic. So I had to get another mailbox. So we have it in studio, so Wilbon can have it also. So I'm making a new mailbox. I just forgot to do it. I should have done that yesterday. Where I just have to cut out a couple of eyeballs and glue a smile on it, but it's really high tech.
Got to bring it to life, right? Do you have plans, since Halloween's around the corner, for how you're going to do that? Well, I know, right?
That is always the last thing that we do. Like the 2 days before, we'll come up with some ideas. And then I'm scrambling like an insane person to get them and have everything overnighted. But I'm so nervous that I brought it up today at our meeting and said, I need to get on this early. Don't let me do that, because you'll crush me if I'm not able to get all that stuff. I really need to have the costumes together by then. So maybe they'll do it a week before. And then thinking about Thanksgiving, because we always have a Thanksgiving feast. And that means I'm going to have two feasts, one in Tony's attic and one on the set if Wilbon is there. I'll whatever it is, I'll make it work out.
this is kind of a joke, but now I kind of mean it a little bit too, was whose job is it to check on Tony in his attic?
His wife.
So is she now like a set designer and like has been thrown into the production world?
She does his makeup, but we have a woman named Tracy who's a friend of Tony's, and he trusts her because he doesn't trust anybody to go into his home. And Tracy is a stage manager, and she's really great with everything Tony related. So she's there every day with him to make sure that the setup goes smoothly and that the camera's working, his audio's good, and she rearranges his pictures on the wall behind him, kicks the dog out because the dog is a big pain. But Carol does come up and put his makeup on.
That's awesome.
I've got to have makeup on TV. Everybody has to have makeup. I see people on TV with no makeup. I'm like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
Out.
What are you at home? What's
Yeah, come on.
Is there anything else that folks maybe misunderstand about your job or have misconceptions about?
I love my job. I've been doing it for a long time. I think there's a lot less jobs these days in television. There's not as many production houses where people can learn the trade. They've all shut down. I mean, for good, for years. There's not really any big ones in Washington anymore where there used to be a bunch. So the jobs are fewer, and so it's much harder to get into the business. So whenever we get kids who come in looking for internships or they're saying that they're going to be in TV, they're going to be in TV, I advise them, put something on the back burner just in case. If you're going to college, take business as well as your communication stuff and journalism stuff, but put something on the back burner in case it doesn't come through. Business is a great thing to go into. There's a lot of other jobs in the TV world or the communications or PR or marketing, journalism. Absolutely can always need journalists, but the jobs are just it's a lot harder to get jobs these days.
Right. But being multi-skilled can only help you, right? So that's something I try to instill too. Mr. Campbell, I think you had a question.
Yeah, and even piggybacking on that. So your background, and I believe Eric Brightholm's background, were more from the television side, but your on-air talent, obviously Tony and Mike, and then their guest hosts predominantly come from a print background side. Can you talk about a little bit about the kind of the blend between the two, but also does that print background side kind of help some of them in terms of how they view things and kind of how they do on the show?
Well, they're journalists, and they both did work for years and years in print and for the Washington Post. And I mean, that being a journalist, it helps in so many ways. They are both just happen to be really good talkers. If you can't be a mumble mouth, you got to have something to say, and you got to do your homework. And doing your homework is the most important thing. So to back up what you're saying, my husband is a journalist and investigative. And when he goes and he speaks to organizations or with kids who are looking to be journalists, a lot of them don't want to be investigative journalists because it involves a lot of work. And to be an investigative journalist, it's a lot of work, and you're got to be meticulous, and a lot of them don't want to do the work. So that's a problem. You got to have people who are investigative journalists always to keep people in line and to find things that need covering for the world and sports and whatever. So yeah, you got to really work hard at whichever part of it you want to go into. But the boys are tremendous. They're just really good. As Tony says, they're yodelers, but they're super good on the air. And they also have incredible chemistry. That also helps to have super good chemistry. The show does well when there's guest hosts, but never as good as it does when the boys are there. Tony and Mike are just so great together.
They're gems. You figured it out for sure. Thank you for giving us this time and for answering our questions. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you would want to say to the students who are going to end up watching this?
You're all going to get past this. Good luck. I know it's a pain. You'll get past this and you'll come out even stronger with smart ideas, and you'll burst out of this craziness with and just move forward and make this a blip in all of your history. And I'm sorry you all have to go through this and miss a year, but
Well, thank you very much.
thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Bonnie.